Hi, everybody. I'm Katya. I'm an alcoholic. I know I was telling Carl earlier today that they're a block away from each other. It doesn't even matter. So, Carl, thank you so much for asking me. And I love this meeting. I didn't realize it was the Covina meeting that I've been to before, but I love this meeting and I love the energy of it. I want to welcome everybody that's new or staying in one of the houses or in their first year. So let me just get into it, right? My sobriety date is October 10th, 1988. Oh, one thing I told Carl earlier, if all of a sudden I freeze and I go blank, I also have you guys set up on my cell phone and I'll just flip quickly to my cell phone. Anyway, so I got sober October 10th, 1988 when I was 20. And so that makes me 31 years sober and 51 years old. And it's just so crazy, right, that I'm sober this long and alive. I remember when I was 19, I was going to turn 19. I was planning my birthday and I way ahead and went, oh, I can't wait till I turn 21. I can't wait to walk into bars with my real ID and go, give me a drink. And I'm going to have a limo with booze and cocaine in it. Like I was planning at 19, I'm planning my 21st birthday. And I heard a voice, that little voice. I've always had that little voice, that gut, that intuition. And it said, you're not to 21. And I was like, shut up. And then I just went about my day. But I didn't even remember that till I was well into my sobriety. And so I grew up here in Studio City, so I'm back home. My father's Persian, my mom's Danish. I'm an only child. They had accents. They were new to the country. So I think, that added in my feeling of being separate or different. And I don't think that makes you an alcoholic, even though a lot of alcoholics share that. I don't think that makes you an alcoholic. I was a complete introvert. I was shy. Quiet. And for those of you that know me, it's like, no, it's really true. I really was. And like people, I could play in my room for hours by myself. School was really hard for me. The social aspect of it, like recess, like what do you do during that time? I was happier just sitting in class, sitting at my desk. And when I was in first grade, my parents had connected with a family. This family my dad had grown up with, and it was a father, a mother, and kids that were, one was born when I was 7, so he was a baby. And then there was a girl that was 4 years older than me and a boy that was 3 years older than me. And their parents also had accents, and all the kids had funny names like mine. And their parents spoke a foreign language like mine. And it was the first time I felt like these people get me. And then I had built-in kids to hang out with, right? I had the baby, which I didn't really care about, but there was the baby, and then there was the girl that was older and the boy. And I was in heaven. And they kind of, they were young enough that they were forced to hang out with me. So they couldn't say, we don't want to play with her. They had to. And I was so happy. And they lived close to us, and we did everything with them. And we would spend weekends. We'd go out of town with them. We'd have dinners at their house, our house. We'd play tennis. We just did everything with this family. And it was the first time I got to sleep over. I had sleepovers at their house. And the secret is in this house, the parents beat the kids. And when I saw this violence, my first personality change. And that doesn't make me an alcoholic either, by the way. But drinking sure was the solution. I hadn't gotten to alcohol yet, but I had a personality change. And by the time I'm in second grade, I'm loud, I'm disruptive. I start fighting in class. I start becoming a bully. I changed. And at that house is where I started experimenting with drugs and alcohol. And I remember the first time I got drunk, I was 10 or 11. I drank scotch and water all night. I puked all night. And the next day I said to my, I call her my cousin for lack of better word. I said to her, when can we do this again? I don't think that's a normal reaction for someone who puked all night, but you know, I was into it. I was totally into it. I was like, give me chemicals. And I just started this quest for just partying is what we called it. And with that, there was almost every drug, every pill, downers, uppers, and I pretty much, you know, liked them all. And I obviously couldn't get them all the time. I couldn't get them often. I mean, she was my source, so it wasn't that often. But when it was on, it was on. And I got into junior high, and now I'm a little bit more independent. And you know, I'm stealing alcohol, and it's still the fun though. But I was fun with problems real soon, real quick. And so I found speed, and it was the diet pill speed, not the you know, meth, pick your skin to the bone speed. And so I find speed, and I was chubby, and it made me not want to eat, and I liked it because no one could tell I was on it. I mean, I was always talking a lot and talking fast, so I just talked more and faster, and I thought, this is the perfect drug. I was always looking for the perfect thing. And then I ended up with a heart murmur. I ended up in the hospital, so I had to quit that. And that's my experience with drugs, is I would do them, they would turn on me, and then I would quit them. And I never quit alcohol, but I would do that with drugs. I found pot made me want to eat the fridge, so I quit pot. And I get into high school, and the stakes are high. Now it's boys, and what do you do with them? I never even kissed a boy, and all my friends are whores. They've already slept with guys already. They all have boyfriends. And I'm in high school, and what are you wearing, and what kind of car are you driving, and all that, and the pressure's too much. I never even opened a book, and I was dyslexic. I didn't know it, so I just cheated my whole way through high school. I'm getting in a lot of fights now, and my anger is snapping off even worse. And I'm now bringing alcohol to school, and I remember there was a time that I would never have done that. Like, alcohol to me was something you would instantly get busted on because of your breath and the way you acted, and all of a sudden it made sense to bring alcohol to school. And so I'm bringing alcohol to school, and it makes school a lot easier. I'm doing a little bit of cocaine, but not a lot because it's too expensive. And my parents are going out of town for weekends, and I drink on that weekend enough. I drink like a month's worth on that weekend, and things happen to me while I'm drinking. I have blackouts. I end up sleeping with guys that I didn't even like, and I would wake up in the middle of having sex and just tell myself, well, he was kind of cute. Well, I did kind of have a crush on him, and I never saw that as like a red flag. This is a freaking, you know, scary problem. So I never saw any of my drinking as a problem, and fighting was a problem. I was on the verge of getting kicked out. I was on the verge of getting suspended. I got in a really, really bad fight, and I came home and I looked like I'd gotten in a bad fight. My dad asked me what happened. I told him, and he's like, well, she's going to want retribution. I don't think he said retribution. That's too big of a word for my dad, but he said something. And she's going to want to get back at you. And I was like, well, what do I do with that? And he gave me a switchblade. So now I'm walking around carrying a switchblade in my sleeve, and I'm driving with the tire iron in my car because I have altercations while driving. I mean, like, I'm nuts. And I'm 17. I tried to start a gang. I lost my gang when it came time to go tag. They were like, you're serious? And I was like, hello, a gang. So I didn't have a gang yet. So I'm 17, and I'm barely graduating high school. And I have this belief that when you graduate high school and you turn 18, you're an adult. And once you're an adult, it's very different. And so I made this was the first time I made the conscious decision to change. I said, okay, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to become a lady. I had ladies in my family. I knew what ladies looked like. They wore Chanel suits and drove Mercedes. So I had a vision of a lady. So I'm going to go become a lady. I'm going to stop fighting. All my boyfriends were hoodlums. My current boyfriend was in jail for robbing houses. So I said, I'm going to go find a nice boy, most likely a nice Jewish boy. You know, my dad would like that. And never heard of a bad Jewish boy, so I'll go find a nice Jewish boy and we'll get married and have one, maybe 2 kids and go live. And that was not a crazy idea from where I came from. However, I had alcoholism and I didn't know it. So I was about to take myself down. So from 17 to 19, when I'm supposed to go do all these things, I went to 4 or 5 different junior colleges. I got no grades. I got a lot of F's or D's or withdrawals. I had a daily cocaine habit. I was trying to deal cocaine, but I was, you know, I used it all. I had a boyfriend that beat me up, and I knew it was because he just loved me so much. You know, he was passionate, and his jealousy, he couldn't contain it. I was living in an apartment that was paid for by some old creepy guy that lived in Boston. I had no electricity, and I didn't really care. My fighting had gotten to a place where my own friends wouldn't go out with me, because I'd fight on the way out the door. And I was drinking all day and sleeping all night. No. I was sleeping all day, drinking all night. And in that moment, if you said to me, Katya, is alcohol a problem or is drugs a problem? Because the other thing was, I had also quit. By that time, I'd had a really bad bout with cocaine, ended up in the hospital, blah, blah, blah. But I quit it on my own. And I had been quit for 7 months. But I was drinking all the time. So in that moment, if you had said to me, Katya, why haven't you completed school? Why do you live in this apartment without electricity? Why do you have a boyfriend that beats you? If you'd asked me any of those whys, I would have brought it back to, I grew up in violence. My mom's drinking bothers me. I would have had a list of the boyfriend. I would have a list of people as to why my life was a problem. And institutions. But the job asked me to do a lie detector test, which is lame. I mean, who cares that I failed it? It's lame. But I was dealing cocaine in the dressing rooms and I was stealing from them. But I couldn't even see that. I just thought lie detector tests are stupid. So, you know, so I'm 19 and I convinced a bunch of girlfriends to go out with me dancing. And I promised them that I won't dance, I won't fight. And they come over, and I told them I won't drink. And they come over, I light candles. I have champagne ready. And that's my version of not drinking, champagne. Like I'm drinking out of the bottle shot kind of girl, follow it with a Diet Coke. No ice, please, ice bothers me. So for me, drinking champagne is like drinking punch. And so they come over, we're all drinking, one girl's not. We stop at a liquor store on the way to the club because, you know, we're under 21. So we stop at the club. I buy wine coolers. Again, this is not what I would buy if I was really drinking. And this girl's not drinking and her name is Crystal. And I asked her, why are you not drinking? And she said she's sober. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm so happy for you. I remember the last time I saw you, you were such a lush at this party, you were embarrassing. And she just smiled at me, you know, with all the wisdom of her 90 days. And we went to the club. Of course, I got in a fight. And so I started asking Crystal about sobriety. And because I had heard of something, Al-Anon, ACA, something. I'd heard of some kind of program where you go if someone in your life is drinking. And so again, all my problems were my mother. So I was asking her all about some program and she said it's called Al-Anon. I asked her to take me and she took me and by accident, we ended up in an AA meeting. And I felt comfortable in the AA meeting because my denial was so thick. So, I mean, if you have any friends that are in denial, just stay shut up because it's a great place to be. I visited AA for 2 months. I never even went to Al-Anon. You know, I would call her every day and she was doing that 90 meetings in 90 days. So she was going to a bunch of meetings and all the meetings she went to were fun and lively and there were all different ages and all different colors and all different cars and you know, I like that. I like that AA wasn't one kind of people. And so I went to AA for 2 months, but I wasn't sober. I didn't need to be. I'm not an alcoholic. I had a problem with cocaine, but I licked that. I haven't done it. So I just visited AA for 2 months, and I asked her 100 questions while we were going, and I made friends. There were cute boys. I mean, it was fun, but I wasn't an alcoholic. And I had moved back home, and I heard a voice as loud as day on October 10th in '88. I was now 20, and it said, "You're going to use cocaine again." And I got really scared, and I knew that was true. And I didn't know what that voice was. And I called Crystal and I said, "What do I got to do to join?" And she said, "You just raise your hand and claim your disease." And so we went to a meeting that broke all the traditions, and it was called the musicians meeting. And some guy raised his hand and said he was an alcoholic and an addict. And I was like, that's what I'm going to say I am, because she went to AA meetings and I wanted to go to AA meetings with her. So I knew I thought I had to say I was an alcoholic. You don't, but I thought you did. So I said I was. I got a sponsor right away. Her name's Mary Shaw. She's still sober. She lives in Kentucky now. But I got a sponsor right away, and I picked her because she gave good boyfriend advice, and she was really hip. And I was already having boyfriend problems. I had at less than 30. I wasn't even a week sober. I had a boyfriend. He was 9 months sober, and he was engaged to a woman that was 9 years sober, and he broke up with her to be with me. Good times in AA. So, so I already have a lady that hates me in AA plus all her friends, with my little 20-year-old butt running around. And so I picked Mary to be my sponsor, and little did I know Mary was on fire for the big book. And I think there's a lot of new people. I'm assuming there's a lot of new people or people in their first year. And I have to say, if you don't have a sponsor that's on fire for the big book, my experience is find one, because the foundation that she created for me through going through the book and making that big book come alive, I truly believe it's the reason I stayed sober for so many years. But I went through the book with her, and we got to that part in the book where it said, "Do you believe you're an alcoholic?" And she closed the book and said, "So do you?" And that was my secret. I'm not an alcoholic. And I told her, I said, "Mary, I've been going to meetings for however long at this time, and I said, I didn't drink like so-and-so, and I didn't lose my house, and I didn't lose my business, and I didn't, and there were a lot of people that were older getting sober. So their stories, I didn't relate. And I thought it had to do with quantity. And I'm really grateful that Mary didn't say to me, "Oh, drugs, alcohol, it's all the same. Let's just keep moving along." Because they're not the same. And she had explained to me, if you give anybody morphine every day for a period of time, they will be physically addicted to morphine, period. It's not a mind over matter thing. They will be addicted to morphine. But you can go to a restaurant and see people drinking a glass of wine. They're not an alcoholic. So what makes an alcoholic? And she said, "We're bodily and mentally different. And I want you to go home and write on your drinking experiences only." And my biggest problem was I could not see the obsession. People would talk about this obsession, and I only set out to have 2 drinks, and then before you knew it, I was on a plane to Mexico, or these crazy stories that I didn't have. And I set out to get drunk. That's the other thing. How do you know you have an allergy if you already set out to get drunk? And you end up drunk, it's like, well, mission accomplished. So in writing about my drinking experiences only, because that was the other thing, I thought there would only be drugs mixed in with all my drinking, and there wasn't. My mind was lying to me. So in writing about my drinking experiences, I would see in nights that I set out to get drunk, I would be perfectly drunk, if there's such a thing, where your legs are wobbly, but you could still walk. You could probably drive, not too great. You could talk, you're slurring. But it's that, like, I don't give a crap feeling. Like your skirt could be tucked in the back of your pantyhose, your ass could be out, and you'd be like, it's fine. That feeling, that was perfect. And then something would happen where all of a sudden I'd be running around the party drinking all the beers that were on the table. And those beers probably had cigarette butts in them and backwash. Or I'd be going to the fridge, just downing gallons of Gallo wine. or whatever. Like all of a sudden I was thirsty and I couldn't explain it. And then I'd throw myself into a blackout or puking or both. And this happened, I don't even know how many times. So I was so grateful for Mary, for her doing that, because the next day I was so excited. I was like, I found my allergy. You know, so it's not enough that I relate to the feelings. It's not. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to. They're like, well, I relate to the feelings. No, I'm not going to stay in AA. I'm not going to do all these crazy things that sponsors have asked me to do and stay this committed to AA if I don't have a real healthy fear of alcoholism. Because my belief about alcoholism is it'll make it so one day it makes sense to drink. And that's what's crazy. That's the craziest part about alcoholism, is one day it makes sense to drink if I'm not doing all the things I need to do to keep up my spiritual program. So, you know, from that moment on, my life's been perfect. Not really. So I went through all the steps with Mary. I got involved in sponsoring right away. I was 6 months sober when I started sponsoring, and Mary was of the feeling of, you know, as long as you're one step ahead. And I'm really grateful that she was not of the, you have to work all 12 steps. She said, as long as you just stay a step ahead. And that's what I did. And by the time I was a year sober, I sponsored 3 girls. I had already finished my amends. And the greatest thing is the relief I got from drugs and alcohol, I started to get from working the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that was the gift that I never truly believed could happen. Like, how is it that the only thing, it wasn't immediate, right? It took work and it wasn't immediate, but I started feeling relief and happy, joyous, and free. And, you know, by the time I was about 4 years sober was when, and because of her having me find my alcoholism, you know, everybody I got sober with were young, and they all got sober behind drugs, and they all went out behind alcohol because they didn't believe they were alcoholic. And some of them came back and stayed sober, and some of them did not. And my Eskimo Crystal just passed away last December of a drug overdose. So I'm really I'm eternally grateful to Mary for that forever. And I try to pass that on to everybody I sponsor. And, you know, so when I was about 4 years sober, and I think what happened to me happened to a lot of people, or at least people that get sober when I do, that get sober fairly young, is your life starts looking normal. And I loved how normal my life started to look, right? Like I had a relationship, I had an apartment, I had a car, you know, stuff. And I started to need to be better than the newcomer. So I don't need to go to a meeting every day. I don't need, right? So all of a sudden I'm like better than you. And I don't need to have a coffee commitment, and I don't need this, or I don't need that, or, you know, whatever it was I was saying to myself. And by this time, Mary had moved to Kentucky, and so I had to find a new sponsor, and I took my time. I don't think I had a sponsor for about a year and a half. I had a relationship that ended when I didn't want it to, so I lost my mind, and I lost my mind sober. And by the time I got a sponsor around 5 years sober, I was on the verge of going out. And so when I met her, Michelle, you know, what do you do with a new sponsor? You go, start back on the steps. So here we go, 1 through 9. And by the time I'm done with 9, my life starts to look fairly normal. And I do the same thing again. I start putting life ahead of AA. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow progression of putting AA last and putting me first. And around 10 years sober, I don't want to work with Michelle anymore. And so I get a new sponsor. So I have this pattern of every 4 or 5 years doing these real big dips in my emotional sobriety, and sometimes physical, like what's happening. I'm losing a job, losing a relationship, money, no money. So I have this up and down relationship with AA, but I don't see that it's me. And by the time I'm 17 years sober, I have so much AA knowledge that it's going to kill me. I know the book, I used to use it like a weapon. I could like throw the book at you and throw pages just to prove I'm right. And I get fired from my very most favorite job. because I'm an HR liability, which means I'm making people cry at work. And if enough people complain to a lawyer, they would have a lawsuit on their hands. And I don't know what's going on. I don't know why. I don't know why I'm so uncomfortable. And I still want to fight. I just don't, because I don't want to go to jail, because I'm 37 and I'm 17 years sober. So I think my ego is keeping me from going to jail. But my anger has never left. And that gangster girl, I mean, you could dress her up, but she's never gone. And so between 17 and 19, I know I'm going to get loaded. Greg.
I just do that and then back one. Okay, cool.
So between 17,
so that.
Oh, Greg, you're bad. So between 17 and 19, I'm trying to figure out what's wrong with me. And I don't think it has anything to do with AA, because I've worked a program and I've gone to book studies and I've done the Joe and Charlie book study. I just don't know what's wrong with me. And I'm trying to go back into my childhood memory, and I'm wondering, did someone touch me funny? And I'm like, no. And I just don't know what's wrong with me. And through a series of events, I get introduced to Linda Jeffers, and two friends of mine, one of them who's on the Zoom here, had both been sponsored by her, and we had reacquainted. And for 6 months, they would tell me about how Linda had changed their life. Linda. And I'm like, I don't like Linda. I've known Linda my whole sobriety. I'm like, she is not a program of attraction for me. And but these two girls they were women now. They were different, and they were basically sponsoring me, even though they didn't know it. And I didn't know it either. So one day I asked Linda, I was 19 years sober, and I asked her, can she show me long-term sobriety happy? Because I had long-term sobriety so far. I knew I wasn't going to keep it, but I knew that I had to find a center of happiness, regardless of what was going on outside of my life, because I had jobs, I'd lost jobs, I'd had money, lost money, I'd been married, I had a house, like I had stuff that I thought for sure would make you happy, and achievements. And so I asked her, can you show me long-term sobriety happy? And she said, if you do what I tell you to do. And I thought that was a bold statement for just another alcoholic woman, and pretty confident of her. And I said, okay. And I literally turned my will and my life over to the care of Linda. I did my best to forget anything I knew, because I knew so much. She used to call me, she'd say, you're an I know. And I would hate that. That was like the worst thing she could say to me, Katya, you're an I know. I'd be like, okay. Which meant I'm not willing, I'm not open, I'm not, none of that. And so she started taking me through the book, and I rolled my eyes, because how many women have taken me through the book? And we always stopped around step 9, and I've been through that book. And so, but I said, okay. And so we started going through the book, and she asked me to get a new book, and like with no notes in it. And that offended me. But I did, and I didn't know how much my ego was wrapped up in my old book. Like I would bring that old book to a meeting, and I wouldn't have to tell you how much time I had. You could just look at my book, and I'd be like, look at my book. So sober, look at it, falling apart. Ooh, here's a page that fell out, because I worked it so much. So I got a new book, and I'm going to the book study that she asked me to go to, and I'm sitting in between two girls that I don't know, and I open up my brand new book that's like so white, and I remember wanting to tell, like, I wanted to elbow both these girls and go, look, I know this book, but that lady over there asked me to get a new book. Like, that's how bad my ego was just fighting. And I started going through the book with her, and she showed me things I had never seen before. And she talked about this way of life, way of living, way of life, way of living. It's not about going to meetings. It's not about not drinking. Way of life, these principles. And I was like, what? I didn't even know what she was talking about. And she never made me feel stupid. She never said to me, but I thought you've been through the book. She just answered every question I have. And I always had problems at work. And here I was unemployed, and my marriage was falling apart. And man, I was bankrupt in almost every area. Well, in every area, right? Marriage was falling apart. I was unemployed. We had no money. The 2008 crash had just happened. Like, it was going down. And I started doing everything she told me to do. And I came at everything with a new attitude, with principles. And I remember telling her, like, for example, I was going to go to this noon meeting at Moore Park. And I really thought that Linda was of the elitist society. And so I was kind of happy I was going to join the elitist society of Linda, because I thought I was of the society type. So I told Linda I'm going to go to this noon meeting at Moore Park. I'm like, you know how those meetings are. You know, they're just a bunch of losers. And I thought for sure she was going to go, oh, I know, they don't work a program. And I love talking to people about how they don't work a program. So she said, how long have you been going to meetings? And I said, 19 years. And she's like, well, Katya, meetings haven't been for you for a long time. And I said, yeah, okay. And I knew it was coming. I'm like, here we go. And she said, you like to throw parties, don't you? Which I do. I love to throw a party. I don't like to come to a party, but I'll throw a party. And I said, yeah, I love to throw a party. She goes, why don't you treat the meeting like it's your house and it's your party and everybody's your guest? What would you do? And why don't you get there 30 minutes early? If you know noon Moore Park, people show up at noon and are surprised when there's no seat. So to get there at 30 minutes early is lame. But I did. I said, okay. And that was the greatest gift I had, was I said, okay. Everything she told me, I said, okay. So I show up there 30 minutes early. Of course, nobody's there but the coffee guy. So I go, I'm talking to the coffee guy. Do you need help? Whatever. He doesn't. Then the doors open, the chairs are set up, the greeter's there. And so I decide, well, if it's my house and it's my party, I would be a greeter. So I made myself a greeter. And I told the guy, you know, I'm going to greet with you. And I kind of didn't give him a choice. And so everybody that walked in, I greeted them like they were my long lost friend. And it wasn't just like, hi, I'm Katya, I'm an alcoholic. I was just like, hey, Carl, how are you? Good to see you. Welcome to the meeting, you know. And that's what I would do for everybody that walked in. And this old guy, Jim, walks in. Now, Jim was an old timer when I was new. So I don't even know how much time he had now. And I was like, Jim, oh my God, how are you? And Jim was kind of off. I don't know if he was slow. I don't know. But Jim was always a little something. And so I was like, Jim, how are you? And he seemed surprised that someone remembered him. And so I walked in with him. I'm like, Jim, do you need a water? Do you need a coffee? Do you need this? Do you need that? No. And he was so happy someone recognized him. I went back to the greeting line, and then in walks Tomas. And Tomas knew Jim from early Radford days. I'm like, Tomas, do you remember Jim? He's like, yeah. I'm like, Tomas is in, Jim's in there. Remember Jim? Go say hi to him. By the time the meeting started, I was in tears, because I already was different. I was already different. And that's just like one of the little things that she asked me to do. And it had to do with selfish and self-centered. That's the root of our troubles. So I had to get out of self in any way that I could. And she was also brilliant at column work. And so when we went through the book, we did column work, we did the inventory, and I got relief on the paper that I've never had before. I mean, unbelievable relief. I'd written about resentments a million times, but I never had true relief. You know, I'd written about that family that beat their kids, but I never had relief. And it wasn't relief like, I forgive them now relief. It was the relief of, oh, this is why I react and how I react to you today, based on a belief that was set in stone when I was 7. And seeing it on the page. It doesn't come from talking. She was the first sponsor I ever had that didn't give me advice. And I can't tell you how valuable that is. Now, everybody needs advice sometimes. I mean, but it was like the first time I called her and I said, I have a resentment against my husband. And I said, I don't like the way, I didn't even say I had a resentment. I said, I don't like the way he talks to me. And she goes, well, let's put it on the page and see what comes up. Any other sponsor I had in the past would say, well, you should tell him this and tell him. But that advice doesn't change me. It doesn't change my thinking. It doesn't change my perception. And you're still the problem. And so for the first time, I did column work that changed my thinking. So in an essence, you know, what's a spiritual experience, right? We hear about this, I'm having a spiritual experience. Like, what is that? It's just that I see you different. It's just that I react to you different. I hear you different. And I'm free, regardless of what you're doing. And, you know, so from 19 to now. So it's 12, 13, almost November will be 13 years. I've still had ups and downs because that's life. I've had money, no money. I've had job, no job. I've had relationship, no relationship. I've like all, the same stuff has happened, except the marriage part. But the same stuff has happened. But I've been fairly happy through the dips. I haven't had high highs and I haven't had low lows, and the dips haven't flipped me out. You know, I lost a job last April, and it was a really weird situation. And I remember talking to my sponsor, and she goes, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to do a whole lot of nothing, because I don't know what God wants me to do." And so from April to June, I just enjoyed my life. I went to New York. I bought a new car, which everybody thought I was crazy. I was like, I'll work eventually. Like, God doesn't drop me. I've got past experience to see how cool God is. And it'll all work out. And one day, someone had said to me, "You know, I know you're looking for a job." I said, "Yeah." And they said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I don't know. I got to have a nice boss and probably do something in sales." And they said, "Well, you know, the Midnight Mission is hiring." And for those of you that don't know what that is, it's a homeless shelter in downtown Skid Row. And I was like, "The Midnight, what do you think I'm going to do there? Counsel alcoholics and homeless people? Like, I don't do that." And they said, "No, it's a job in development." I didn't even know what that meant. And long story short, it's basically sales, but not. And instead of selling a product, I'm selling a story, which is what the Midnight Mission does. And my one thing was I had to have a nice boss, and my boss is really nice, and he's the first nice boss I've really ever had. And you know, I started working there. The first week I was there, I cried twice, and I would just get so moved by what was happening and what we were doing, as I would cry. And it was the first job I've ever had where it filled my heart. You know, my jobs always filled my bank account, and I was happy with that, because all the AA work I did after work, you know, filled my heart. But for the first time, you know, my job is fulfilling. I've never had a fulfilling job before, and I love it there. And you know, with COVID, of course, it's a huge adjustment. It's an adjustment for everybody. And you know, for 31 years of my adult life, I have spent socializing in AA meetings and being of service in and out of AA meetings. And it's a huge part of my person, and that has changed so much. And so I'm having to find ways to fulfill that social aspect that I have, that seeing human being aspect that I have, you know, spending time with new people, and just figuring it out so that I'm not too uncomfortable. And, you know, I think I'm done, Carl. So I really wanted to thank you guys. And if anybody's new and females, you know, that are looking for a sponsor, I am available, and Carl has my, you can private message me, or Carl has my number. Thank you, everybody.